Damn, it has been a while since I read the first book, We Ride the Storm, but I finally got around to reading the sequel. I remember liking the first book, but also remember it not being perfect, so I wonder how this one's going to be. We Live with Death is not self-published, but it's not self-published book as the first one originally was. I have the trad and traditionally published one of both, but apparently some changes were made between the first two book editions that Madson does discuss in the intro. If we look, just to quickly show you, not that we're gonna read it because this is... So yeah, author's note, for those readers who are coming to this book straight from the original self-publish of We Ride the Storm, please be aware that there are a few significant changes in the new edition. And then what the changes in general are, which I like. I actually like. I think it's fine, and there are some. I know. What I think is fine is that there are things you're not satisfied with in your book. Madson definitely has the right to change things up between edition. Oh, it's gone a little damaged. Oh well. However, if you're gonna do that, please write so people know. Otherwise, I think it's perfectly fine to do it. Now, We Live with Death has a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, which is really good, but it only has 500 ratings and 100 reviews, which for this book isn't really a lot. I forgot to check what the first book has, but I assume it's way more. And as you will see, I have a lot of issues with this book, but I honestly don't think it's the worst book I've ever read, and I don't think it's as bad as I probably make it out to be. It's just the negatives tends to, weigh more on your mind than the positives. So now, something I don't have an issue with is this cover. I freaking love this cover. It fits so well with the story. It also fits well with the first book in the series, because it's the same art style, it's just red instead of yellow. So they still stand out from each other, but I love the monochrome with the yellow as the only thing. Given that I assume the orange yellow here is a reference to the major fire that's happening in the book, and I also think it's supposed to be Empress Miko we see with her bow and her army behind her. I think it's a great cover, and I would 100% pick up this book if I saw it in a bookstore. And then you might go, but it's a sequel, why would you need to be entitled by the cover? Well, sometimes you don't realize it's a sequel before you pick up the book. So it would make me pick up the book, and then I would be like, oh, it's a sequel, let me see if I can find the first book. So it still creates sales or at least traffic to your books. And that's even if people who will buy this book needs to get the first one first. So in a way, it still matters a lot how a cover looks. You could argue if you're on the 8th book in a series, it doesn't matter, but as just the 2nd or the 3rd book definitely matters. But let's get to the story. It's been a long time since I read the first book, so I'm glad we started this book with a short recap of the story. And in the review, we will discuss each character somewhat separately, given most of them have their separate stories in this overlapping big story, but they do overlap, and that's fine, and we'll take it as it comes. So let's start by talking about Ra's story. He's stubborn bastard, and I love him. His story is so emotionally charged given the first book, and he just wants to see his friend one last time before going home. I like how he tries to push back on Empress Miko when it comes to barbarian tendencies. Tradition is such a huge part of him, and he doesn't understand that when he removed the head of the dead, that the woodcutter's wife gets more upset from it, because to him that's natural to do. So we get already pretty early on in the book some great cultural clashing. And what I like about Rai is he's the type of leader every Levante would wish for, but he's scared. Everyone has always said that he was great, but now exiled 2 times, how can he be great? And this culminates in the fight with Thor, where it's literally the future of his people they are fist fighting about, and it's great. And then ending it with an ultimatum to the guards, it's just chef's kiss, perfect story. Now moving on to Miko. Miko's story started out quite boring to me. Her discussion with her general felt like it was way too long, and it never really felt like it went anywhere. But then when they meet Thor and Ra, the story really picks up, and we get to see Miko as a person with feelings. something wild is she is trusting Ra. No, I meant to write treating. She's treating Ra. And I know she wants information, but she does her best to make sure he recovers still. Like, he doesn't just make him survive, she actually wants him to recover. It shows insane character that the Empress, who just lost her kingdom, is helping the attackers survive. Mad respect, to be honest. Now, Disheva, I started out thinking her story was the best one by far. The conflicting feelings she has from her herdmaster forcing them to embrace the culture of the captured enemies works really well in creating tension. You can feel the conflict and the tension among everyone, but Disheva shows it clearly, and it gives us a window into this conflict. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but the sex scene was a bit off-putting, because apparently Disheva is known for sleeping around quite a bit, and some soldiers then think that means she's like a must-have on like having sex resume, which is odd to me. I would not have to say it's a disgusting way of looking at women, which I should not have to say. Oh god, I'm reading horrible. It is really horrible. And she does get disgusted too, but then feels bad, which she shouldn't. You should never be feel sad for getting mad if someone only sees you as an easy way to get sex. Her story keeps revolving around her feelings of duty to her people and her feelings towards Gideon. And we're told how Gideon is great with his words, but we aren't shown that. Whenever he talks, it never feels like he's a master of charisma. But when he's shot and refuses to act like it matters, it makes me recall attempted shootings of Nixon where he just says, "Missed me," the absolute lack of fear when seen from the outside. And that's where we see why Gideon is so trusted, so followed. But whenever he talks, you don't feel that. And Disheva, we get she has her doubts and her problems, but we don't get her to push back. I would want her to push back a little, or at least for Madson to show us some pushback from other side characters. Or even just no-name guards would be perfectly fine. Now the final character we're going to talk about here for section 1, well, the final thing, is Cassandra's story. Her story starts a little weird to me, because she tries to escape, is stopped, and that's really it. I really want more banter between her and the voice inside of her, especially now that we got more people who can hear it. It would be fun to see it banter with them and ignore Cassandra. God, when they got to the mansion, the story just doesn't get better though. The voice in her head has a smaller role than ever, and while the other stories have started and are well on their way, Cassandra's doesn't really feel like it is at all. It's just boring until the testing. When the witch doctor starts testing Cassandra, that's when her story picks up and starts being great. I love how we get the metaphysical philosophy of the world and all the testing of the subject. But what we really get is to see Cassandra for who she is. And the very ending is perfect. My only problem with her story are twofold. It's too slow of a start, and we skip too much of the testing. Otherwise, I think it's really, really good. Now let's talk about the rest of the book. For Miko and Ra, the stories are now so intertwined that it's practically impossible to distinguish them, but I'll discuss what happens to their story under the separate chapters. By that I mean, if it happened under a Miko chapter, we will talk about it in the section about her character and what I think about her story. If it's happened during a Ra chapter, we'll talk it during him, if that makes sense, or as you will realize, hopefully. So for me, let's start with Miko. After traveling with Ra and Tor, Miko reached the castle of Cyan, and I absolutely love the time spent there. She believes she has an ally there, we know already that she doesn't, but it just works to heighten the tension. We do learn that Miko has one ally, the son of the Lord, and the way they discuss and she learns what is actually going on is super neat. It's one of those cases where thinking on your feet is important. Then we learn that there is someone out there who just wants her dead, and I refuse to believe it was the servant girl working on her own. And finally we'll get the escape with Tor decide to go on his own. Expected, it creates a dilemma. How is she going to work with Ra? For the rest of the travel, this exciting plot point of working together and not being able to communicate is not really going anywhere, other than one ambush in their trip to the capital goes without any problems. Then when she goes to the capital and she and Ross split up, that's when the problems happen, and we do get some great dialogue when the emperor about their past and the nature of the situation. I also think the way she becomes empress is fine. It doesn't hurt the story that it happened so fast, nor does it matter. We all knew it was bound to happen. But I really wanted more of her and Ra trying to learn to communicate using hand signals and stumbling, failing, going days or something without food because she can't hunt or whatever. But he can hunt, but he doesn't know what fruits to pick or plant or push berries or whatever. Have them struggle. Now talking of Ra, they start off with having sent the Empress off. Ra and Tor is sent to eat with the soldiers. This is when they're at the Cyan Castle. Clearly so the guards can keep an eye on Ra and Tor, and later take them as hostages. But it's during this dinner we get the greatest scene in the entire book, the fight between Ra and Tor. It's so fucking good. We see and now understand why Tor keeps following Ra. We see why everyone talks about Ra with reverence or avoid talking to him. But we also see, talking about him, but also see Ra's insecurities and fears. But what I love the most is how even though they're on the same side, you can see they want the same thing but differently. Fucking hell, watching a fight where one side is trying to convince the other he is the greatest leader possible and should be treated as a hero while the person is just scared and refuses to call is so wild. It clearly shows how this entire debacle has changed everyone in some ways. Now the fight leads to Ra threatening the soldiers with suicide when he learns their plan to give the Empress to Gideon. This leads to the escape in the boat where Tor leaves them. And now we have Ra and Miko on their own, and the sailing section was great. It's such an interesting concept to see them trying to communicate without being able to understand each other. Also the dog is cute and a great third companion. Now you would think them keep talking to each other in their native languages would be annoying when they have no clue what the other one is saying. But it doesn't, it's super interesting. We get some great introspective information from Ra on his people and their customs. What I would wish that we as the reader didn't understand Miko when she talked, and of course vice versa in Miko's chapters. It would be great if she spoke in a Khan language or just gibberish, just straight up random letters, keeping us in the dark would heighten the uncomfortableness that Ra is feeling. Then as they learn each other's words, we as the reader would also start to understand her. Maybe her gibberish suddenly have one or two words that we can read. Of course I get the reason why. Not it would be a gamble and some way and be quite jarring, so I get why we wouldn't do it. And we don't really get much from Ra's POV until we get where he splits with Miko. And I think that's a mistake. We're told Ra is this big stoic character that seems to have things figured out and is able to take action. And then we get his POV and he's just a wreck. I love it. It's like he's the greatest at poker. When Ra gets to the capital and decides to free Mansion, we see his old swords are still respectful towards him and that the Levante people are more about respect than anyone else. Also him freeing Mansion is like a final gift to Miko, and it is what enables her to reascend her throne. And then we get the duel. And the duel's fine. It was interesting with someone shining a light in his eyes, but it would have been better if we were told it wasn't the sun, but were told how it was done. It just felt a little off to me. I do love that he lost and had to go into exile again. But even though he has to do that, we still have to punish Seth for interfering, showing that even though Ra is exiled, the law is the law, and he has the right to do what he has to do. Now, let's talk about Desheva, because her story is weird. Because on a conceptual level, I love it a lot. The idea of her having to try and figure out how to control and adapt her swords. But it just isn't done very well. I would have loved for her to have to deal with more angry people and fights between the Levante and the Kissians. But we get super peaceful. Then there's the mystery of why everyone dies around her. and it is again, on a conceptual level, super interesting. But we don't get any clues, nothing happens, there are no stakes to the murders, people die and everyone is just fine. And when she learns who is behind it, it doesn't feel like a revelation, nor does it feel earned. It honestly does not feel like earned. It honestly does not feel earned at all. And when she travels to the deserters and we learn of horse whispers and what their plan is, it feels like we need some more world building. What is a horse whisperer? Did I just forget from the first book? Still, please remind me more. I do love the skirmish between the swords she brought with her when she comes back from the deserters. I felt proper for the Levante to fight over the ideals in this way, especially now that the culture and history is being almost deleted in the purpose of finding a new home. And that's what I would like to have more of. This like both external clash with the Kissians, but also internal clash. And I'd like to see both the Levante have these two clashes, but also the Kissians, and then Desheva and Gideon in the middle, trying to solve it. Well, Gideon propping it on Desheva and be like, fix this, and she'd be like, how the fuck am I gonna do that? That's what I want, but it's not what we got. Final story is Cassandra. For Cassandra, the story is very up and down to me. I wish Kesa would have played a bigger role in her head, but instead the princess plays a bigger role. And it was super cute when the princess was forced to take over a dead body because she could move freely and without pain. Like, that was just cute. But I don't know what to think about it. The story is very much, for most part, a filler story in this book, and I think that's a shame. And just when I was like really thinking that, we get an explanation for how Cassandra's story fits in with the bigger picture, while also getting explanation for Dom Vilnius, for what's going on. I love and because of that I love the final chapters with Cassandra, and I think her and the Empress are a great team and a lot of fun. I just wish we got more of her, and maybe had more of the big interconnected stories of everyone else, like spread a little into her, instead of them just hearing about it. But maybe they do see some of the clashes, some of the smaller skirmishes, maybe they see some Kissians and Levante struggling against each other, something, just maybe see some Chilteans talking about what's going on, I don't know, anything. But yeah, let's get to a conclusion where I'm gonna try and sum up my thoughts. And I'm sad that the first half of the book is so boring and so much of the important information is hidden in seemingly filler discussion. The Dom Vilnius reveal was hidden in one exposition heavy discussion, and it felt like Madson was going for some mystery and a callback, and it would have worked great if we got more of the exposition than just one conversation. It didn't feel like it was super relevant for others than Cassandra. Yet we learned it is relevant for everyone, and so it would have been great with more emphasis on it. Another thing that Madson missed the mark on is when something is earned and when it's not. Especially the Desheva story has a huge problem with this. It feels like Desheva has never earned the information she gets, nor that she has enough information to conclude what's going on. Yeah, but it happens, and I feel like it's a shame because the story could be be a super interesting mystery story in the dark and gritty fantasy book. And when people die, it doesn't feel like it matters, but it's just shrugged. So why should we as readers care? And on the other hand, I think Madson got an insanely interesting premise going with Miko and Ra, and the lack of communication, and in general the theme of the culture and language clashing. It is super interesting to see how people of such different backgrounds with no real way of communicating with each other actually communicate and discusses things with each other. And something I think is good about this book is very much a setup for another big battle. And I think in the next book we would get way more of Cassandra and the princess, I don't remember her name right now, because they are gonna have to figure out what to do with Don Vilnius, and we get more of Miko, and I'm very interested in where Ra is going because he's been completely exiled. Is he gonna join Miko? Is he gonna just go back home? What's he gonna do? So in conclusion, should you read this book? And I would say for most people, no. I think the book has missed the mark on too many of the themes and beats it sets out to do. But I think it could have gotten there, and I might be picking up the rest of the series, as I said, to see if it gets better. But for now I've gotten enough of the Broken Empire for quite a while, and yeah, so I would not recommend this book. The first one I would. The first one's really good, but the sequel it's not. So yeah, please leave a like, comment and subscribe, and next time we will be doing a mystery book.